So we're going to go over the different types of metal tools we have in the shop, and we're going to start with, we're going to try out the shear. Not a bad idea when you're first off, make sure you have your safety glasses on. There are instances where some of the metalworking equipment is loud, and you can use a pair of earplugs. We also have the earmuff type things. This isn't terribly loud right now, but just put them in so don't forget. Anyway, and metal is sharp and sometimes hot. Be very careful if you see parts of what people are doing. If they're forging or welding, the metal will be hot, and you want to make sure that you don't touch it with your bare skin, so gloves can come in handy. Anyway, so a couple different types of steel we got hanging out here. We have this 5/16 1/4" kind of rod we have to work with. Mild steel. Most of the steel you're going to see here is mild steel. You don't want to use any galvanized or coated steel when you're heating it up. We also have some, this is like a 22 gauge metal, very thin. That's the gauge thickness. As the number goes up, it gets thinner. For gauge, an 18 gauge, which is a little thicker, a little heavier. And then there's some, it's a 4" by length, but 1/8", again, mild steel. Those are both cold rolled. The shinier stuff is cold rolled. It means when it was manufactured, it's going through an extra couple steps of finishing so that it has this shinier surface. This is hot rolled so that it comes out, as it's rolled out of the machinery, it's still glowing, so it has scale on it. Anyway, talk about the shear here, or the bench shear. So I can take this and you can put it in between those, and then, here, let's get rid of, separate that, and then pull down. You would not want to have your fingers in there. Pull down, and you can slide it forward to cut some more. It's kind of hard to keep it straight, but fairly straightforward, and you can cut through it. Again, you don't want to have your fingers in close. Rod, you do not want to cut rod on the blade right there, but you can use this hole right here. So, as I was saying, there's a hole right here. Do not put any rod in the blade cutting surface. You'll make a divot in it, and it won't cut very well, or it won't cut sheet very well after that, but you can use this section here for rod. You have to pull down, and it cuts it. This stuff is going to take more energy to cut, okay? So you have to pull harder. Be careful that you don't stand right behind this, and or watch it, be in control of this, because if you bring it down and hit yourself in the head or on the shoulder, it will hurt. All right, back to. So I've slowed this down so I can kind of talk over it. The upper blade, as you pull that down, is going to cut through the metal, well, in combination with the lower blades. There's a blade on top and a blade on the bottom that it's slicing through, just like a scissors. This is 1/8 inch thick mild steel, which is softer than a hardened steel, or high carbon steel. And that's probably the maximum on this machine. It probably is rated a little higher, but it kind of, a bit tough to pull on it. So just make sure that you keep your fingers out of, the cutting area. All right? Take care. Another cutting device we have is the foot shear. This is good for sheet pieces. They don't have to be this big, but you do not use this with rod. There's no rod cutting action on this. It's called a foot shear. There's 2 blades, much like the other shear that we looked at. And we're going to zoom in here. And you can kind of see down in there, don't stick your fingers in here, but there's a blade on top and then a blade mounted to the table. So when I put on my foot on the shear, on the pedal here, and I go up and down, it drops them down. So you get a scissor-like action. So you take your sheet metal and you want to line it up with that, what you could see there before. If you have a mark on there, I can look over and see those. And then you want to be careful, make sure no one's going to get hurt if their feet are underneath there. So you can put your foot on the thing and then you push down. Sometimes you climb up on top of it and come down like that. Make sure you have balance, and then you can get nice straight cut. All right, that's the foot shear. No fingers in there, nothing thicker than 18 gauge steel, and it has to be sheet. If you have lots of little welds or something on it, scrappy and bent, you can't use it with this. Just nice, straight, flat sheet. Okay. So the next saw we're going to look at is the horizontal band saw. It has a couple of different controls on it, but you can see it has a clamp and a band blade that goes all the way around. The clamp is controlled by this crank here. This crank here tensions the blade. So do not use this. Try to make a habit of not lifting it like that, because if you loosen that, the blade will come off the wheels. But I can turn this and tighten it. And then we can come in a little closer and see some of the other controls. So this opens it and it drops down, and then this can fine tune it. So if I close this all the way and lift it up, that won't drop down. It's probably leaking a little bit. Now I can adjust how fast that comes down. So this just opens it, and this is a fine-tuning valve. The faster it comes down, the more likely you are, it depends on what you're trying to do, but you may get a more curved kind of cut. It will bend, it'll twist to that. If you go slower, it'll give you a straighter cut. So let's try that out. Also, it's kind of hard to see, there's a shaft in here that you can raise this pin and move this, slide this in closer and set it in to the different sections, so you can have this tighter or have it wider. So there's only so much that the crank tightens it, and you can reset it. It's kind of a little tricky, but it can be done. If you need help with it, let us know. So this saw is really good for bigger stuff. It's slower, but you can cut through some larger stuff. I'm going to take this piece of shank stock. Roll this out a little bit. It's on wheels. I'm going to turn the crank so that it tightens that down. I'm going to make sure it's flat against that. Tighten it. You can also do angles with it. And I can bring this down so we can see how that's lining up. And I could check it with a thing. You want to make sure the blade isn't resting on the metal before you start to cut it. The switch to turn it on is right here. There's also a switch that is on for the pump. There's a pump that pours coolant. So when you're cutting metal, you don't want the blade to overheat, so it pumps coolant over the blade, okay? Keeps it cool. So turn it on. So then I'm going to open this up and let it come down. A little harsh there. So you don't want to push down on this. You want the gravity to do the cutting.
Well, the gravity is feeding the blade down into the metal. Not really cutting, it's just feeding it.
It also shuts itself off, hopefully, because this little thing hits the switch and clicks it off. All right, so that's the horizontal bandsaw. Another saw we have out here is what we refer to as a chop saw. It's got a abrasive blade, and there's a pin right here. If it's locked down like that, push it down a little bit and pull that pin out. You can raise it up, and it has an abrasive blade. It's made of an aluminum oxide material, and it'll wear down. So this will get smaller as time goes by. So we're going to cut this rod, set it in there. You can slide back and forth, so I can slide that to lock it in place. Flip this down, and then tighten it the rest of the way. Make sure it's good and snug. And then I'm going to grip. There's a safety on the top here, on the handle. I'm going to push that in and then squeeze on the thing. It's also a good idea to wear a face shield when doing this. So you can utilize a face shield. And ear protection. If I pull this, I want to get the blade moving. It's going to rotate that way. I want to get it moving before I put it against the metal. One thing to remember, amongst all the other things, is that friction creates heat, okay? So you can see the color on there, and I got a glove on here, and you can also see the sharp burr. So this creates a lot of heat, as well as sparks, as you saw, and so it's hot and sharp, so be careful of that end. Not a good idea necessarily to be wearing gloves around things that have parts where you can catch the gloves, especially if they're really loose, you can pull your hand in. So you gotta, think about when you're wearing a glove and when you're not wearing a glove, all right?